It's kind of a moot point anymore. I'm a constitutionalist, but arguing constitutional arguments anymore is a moot point because we've moved so far away from the Constitution now through judicial activism and through legislation. And as we saw last week, Congress was trying to pass a bill without even taking a full vote on it. These people don't like to play by the rules. I can tell you personally, from going to the United States Republican Convention, they make them up as they go. They changed the rules the Friday before the convention so that we as Ron Paul delegates could not even speak. We could not offer nominations. All we want to do is offer a nomination for delegates for Ron Paul National Convention. They didn't know how many numbers we were. We ended up being about 350. Typically they have between 800 and 1,000 there. They loaded it up, added 400 to 500. I think there was like 1,300 total there. But still that wasn't enough. They changed the rules so that the nominations for delegates to the National Convention would come from a committee report, was unamendable, undebatable, and if stood, was the total nomination process. And if you're familiar about parliamentary procedure, that violates every one in the book, as well as the Republican national rules said they could not change the way they nominated delegates after September the previous year. Their own rules said they could not change the rules of the convention without a unanimous vote of the entire committee. We know for a fact it was a teleconference. It occurred on Wednesday night of that week. It was at 7 o'clock, and there were 3 people in the State Central Committee that were not there. So it was not unanimous. But these people don't care. They make their own rules. Back to war. I'm with George. I'm a non-aggression pact. I will not go out and try to be aggressive to someone. If someone messes with me, I'm usually packed. One of the problems I have with war is we do not fight for the right things. We are not out there fighting to promote liberty or individual liberty.
We're making money.
Yes, exactly. Making enemies. Making enemies. Ron Paul schooled Giuliani in the debates about blowback. It's real. If every time I walk out my drive in the morning to go to work, and my neighbor's dog in his yard barks at me, and one morning I get tired of it and I walk over to his yard and kick his dog, do I have the right to be upset that dog bites me? No. You have to respect other people's sovereignty. Personally, I would be at war with Afghanistan or with Saudi Arabia, Yemen, United Arab Emirates, mainly because they do not respect individual liberty in the way they treat their women. They're monarchies. We support monarchies. Iraq was the most forward government, even though it was run by Saddam Hussein. They had the most freedoms of any country in that region. Iran today, I have 2 friends at work who are from Iran. They have family living over there. Outside of the 20 or 30% of the fundamentalists that run Iran, 80% of them, says you wouldn't, they dress like us. They don't wear all the burqas and everything. It's a big myth on TV to propel us to hate them and to want to go to war with them. I'm a non-interventionist. We don't go out and look for trouble. Our founder said that as well. Be friends to all, enemies of none, promote free trade. And I think that's what we should do. One more point on war. There is what's called a just war doctrine. It goes clear back to Cicero, who first theorized it. St. Thomas Aquinas worked on it further. But basically, the Catholic Church in 1988 reauthored it and published it. It sets the principles of war, why you should go to war, if it's an act of oppression, to defend yourself, and to what ends do you go to punish those that fight you. Do you wipe them off the face of the earth? And so on. And that's one of my problems with this war. When does it end? A friend of mine I thought was on an airplane on 9/11. He was due to travel from Boston on that day, actually 4 of my friends. I was quite upset. I mean, anybody that remembers 9/11, you probably watched the thing crash into the towers 20 times like myself. It makes you ticked. But after I thought about it for a couple of days, I talked to him. He said, what do you think? I said, what do you think about these terrorists? I said, well, it's all relative. One man's terrorist is another man's patriot. And now we're finding out if you stand for the Constitution, if you follow Bob Barr in the last election, or Ron Paul, or Chuck Baldwin, Department of Homeland Security thinks you might be a threat. You're returning returning veteran from the Middle East. You might be a threat. One man's patriot is another man's terrorist. It's all on who determines what the rules are. As long as we have, I call it an imperial presidency, who has almost unlimited powers, I think we're going to have problems with that. And down the road, we're going to see people. We already are. 2 weeks ago, they came out and admitted that they believe they have the right to target Americans in foreign countries if they feel they're terrorists and assassinate them. Fourth and Fifth Amendment really don't mean anything anymore in this country. That's all I have.
All right.
Any questions?
Any questions?
I don't fit too well with a lot of Republicans. We did a gun show this weekend, and I had three different couples, my age, late 40s, early 50s, come up wanting to know how libertarians fit in with the Tea Party. Now,